today, Mississippi signed their religious freedom law into it was the governor signed the law into today. So the law states that it protects sincerely held religious beliefs or moral convictions, including the belief that marriage is only between a man and a woman, and that sexual relations should only occur in such a marriage. So, yeah, it also says that a person's gender is determined by anatomy and genetics at the time of birth, and goes on to say that businesses can determine who is allowed to access bathrooms, dressing rooms, and locker rooms. Now, you've probably already heard a little bit about this. It is like a steroid version of the bill that was shot down here in Georgia. Our governor, Governor Deal, did veto ours here, only because, the Georgia coffers were threatened, not because he was a real friend to the LGBT community. But it still actually did get vetoed here in Georgia, which is a good thing, regardless of why it happened. There are several different places. I know we mentioned it last week. There are several different places that have mentioned that they're canceling anything other than official business. I know New York has said they're canceling official business. I believe Seattle said the same thing. If it's not official business, they're not going to Mississippi at all. So it's going to be really interesting to see to what extent an economic boycott would actually work in terms of addressing this law. I mean, it's already been signed into, I'm not really familiar with how things work in Mississippi, but it's already been signed into law. I'm not sure if there's a period within which the legislature or anyone else can come together and do anything. I doubt that they would, since they passed it. It's going to be very interesting to see what legal challenges mount. This idea that you can just, refuse to serve anyone based on religious objection. I mean, basically they're codifying, they're enshrining, legalized discrimination again in the law. I mean, this notion that you can just, I have a religious and the fact that it says religious belief or moral objection or moral conviction, that moral conviction language is very, very vague. Like what? I mean, like, that's just basically, I need to look up and see if there's a specific definition of what moral conviction, and like I said, I'm going to start doing short videos throughout the week, since I do the 1 hour with you guys on Tuesdays, and every once in a while I hop on with Ben and Nick and Solomon, but I'm going to start doing short videos throughout the week, to kind of just touch on some of the issues that are going on that I think are cool to talk about with you all. And maybe this is something I'll come back to. Because this language, because religious beliefs, okay, that's pretty, like, you have your set, like, religious texts and stuff. That's pretty, like, cut and dry. We can debate the merits of whether or not you can rely on them or not. But this idea of moral convictions, that just seems so much more ambiguous and, like, all inclusive. That basically, if you're not even a practicing Christian or Jew or whoever, you can just say, well, I'm morally objective to this, so I'm not going to serve you. Like, it's highly problematic. And it actually reminds me of a Good Wife episode. I don't know if it was last season or season before last, but Diane actually did a mock trial type of setup with a similar law like this. And the issue was, in that case, it was yes, we're talking about the Good Wife. The issue in that case was, it was a similar type of law, and it was a gay couple wanted this person to serve as their wedding planner. Now, I'm sitting there watching it, and even though I think that these laws are atrocious, at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, well, personal service, you can't make somebody work for you, that's the whole prohibition against slavery, blah, blah, blah. But as they were talking in the episode, they were talking about how, you have some of these small towns where, like, that person will be the only person who provides a specific service for miles. And they were talking about how the burden of having to drive 4 hours each way to get to the nearest large city where there were wedding planners to plan their wedding and all this stuff. Because I couldn't understand, why would somebody want, someone who hates them basically to plan their wedding? Like, that's such an intimate and personal, and of course it's a TV show, so it's not necessarily the best example, but it was still an interesting episode. But at the end of the day, how Diane was able to poke holes in this supposed religious objection was the fact that the person at issue was very selective, right, with the religious objection. Okay, she's against gay couples, helping them. But it turned out that it was documented that she knew that she had helped marry previously divorced couples, and that she had helped couples who had had affairs and like all types of stuff, which also should have been, you know, religious objections. So she'd even worked a wedding. This is kind of an extreme example, but she'd even worked a wedding where there was shellfish, you know, being served. So it was really interesting at how it was a conversation, and what ended up in the episode being a conversation, how people cherry pick, and how when we're talking about the law and protecting rights, we can't tolerate that cherry picking, that selective enforcement, that selective, I don't really like you because of this, but you're okay because of that. Like that's not even, how can you even measure that? Like, how do you even enforce something like that? So as we're moving forward, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see like how we're going to really get into that, like how we're going to address like what the strategy is. I'm sure there's already a lawsuit in the making. Like just I'm sure there's a lawsuit already in the making. I'm sure there's already something, you know, cooking and in the works.
So anyway, folks, Anoa talked about something. I might as well go ahead and discuss it now, because she already brought it up. HS 1523, the piece of legislation from Mississippi. The only thing I want to add, in addition to what Anoa has already said about the legislation, never mind the hypocrisy of it, never mind because that's a big component of it, but setting aside the hypocrisy, setting aside the institutionalized segregation, it's like it is its own version of Jim Crow. Right. It's not nationwide, so it is not the same as Jim Crow, but it is its own version of Jim Crow. You know, they're codifying discrimination. Setting that aside, my question is, I really want to find out ALEC's role, the American Legislative Exchange Committee, I believe the C stands for. I want to find out their role in this, because this exact same piece of legislation is spreading across the country so quickly. And particularly with North Carolina, there was a portion in the North Carolina bill that banned local municipalities and city governments from increasing the minimum wage. So it not only codified discrimination and segregation based on sexual identity and sexual orientation, but it also, hidden inside of it, was the portion of the bill that removed cities' rights to raise the minimum wage above you know, the state level. And it's always been here, right? The federal government would set a standard, and the state government was always free to go above it. And then the state government would set a standard, and the local governments, in terms of minimum wage, and the local government was always able to go above it. And inside of this legislation that's spreading across the country is a component, a segment, I can't think of the word right now, that bans local municipalities from doing this. So I really want to, when I get a chance, and I'm sure I'm actually saying this for you guys, because I think everyone is citizen journalism, to research and find out the hand that ALEC has in this, because it's not just discrimination. There's an economic component to it as well. All right, Anoa is back. I can be quiet, I think. Anoa, what's up? What's up? Are you there?